Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rachel Zuanon. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting us, and for the opportunity to be here and for sharing our outcomes with you. Previously, I would like to bring you some context. I'm the leader of a Brazilian research group focused on neuroscience and creative processes. Our lab is based in the State University of Campinas, located in the state of São Paulo in Brazil. Our main research focus concerning neuroscience and creative processes are architecture, interior, and landscape design, biowearables and smart textiles, digital and gaming experiences, and education on architecture, art, and design. For now, we are going to be focusing on architecture, interior, and landscape design, and later on, we are going to be focusing on education, architecture, art, and design in our poster presentation. Starting our presentation, I'm going to present the research Drawing Memories, Intersections between the Sites of Memory and the Memories of Places. This research explores the relationship between people, place, and memory. Drawing Memories discusses the links between the concept of sites of memory and the concept of convergence-divergence zone. The concept of sites of memory was coined by the French historian Pierre Nora to designate places in every sense of the word, from the material and concrete object to the most abstract, symbolic, and functional entities. This concept includes all vestiges of places which are recalled and transformed by the history of a society. Now, as for the concept of convergence-divergence zone, this concept was proposed by the Portuguese neuroscientist Antônio Damasio. Convergence-divergence zone can be defined as a set of neurons where a large number of handle signals make contact in feed-forward feedback loops. These loops assist the neural architecture responsible for the evocation of memories and hence the recognition of all our surroundings. In other words, the purpose of the theory is to set out a neural architecture of cortical connections endowed with converging and diverging node markers, closely related to perception and memory. From this perspective, Damasio extends the site of a memory concept to the area of neurophysiology when defining the theory of convergence-divergence zones. In light of this, our research collates information about the relationship between the history and the relevant memories of the central area of the city of Campinas, located in the state of São Paulo, Brazil. The purpose of this is to identify the possible connections between the physical sites of memory and the neurophysiological places of memory. In other words, which physical sites of memory were mediated by the neural convergence-divergence zones and therefore recognized by the inhabitants. Thus, we carried out a field research with a sample of 260 interviewees from 15 to 80 years old, both genders and without background in art, architecture, or design. The methodology of this research involved both a qualitative and a quantitative analysis. The interviewees answered a questionnaire in which they expressed the main things they could remember about key features of the city. The interviewees also produced the drawings from which it was possible to identify places of memory. This took into account the fact that memories that are made up of events can be evoked from the representation of any one of the factors that form the event. It is important to say that the interviewers were free to write about anything they wished without any type of imposition or restriction. The next step was establishing categories on the basis of the answers of the interviewees. These categories guided the analysis and were devoted to an understanding of the relationship between memory, the city, and the cultural heritage, such as religious buildings, monuments, and streets, squares. This table summarizes the key features of the cities of memory and the sites of memory and the memory of the places in the central area of Campinas. These key features are related to thoughts, affection, imagination, or losses in the center of Campinas, which were obtained from the answers in the questionnaire. As you can notice in the first column, you can see the question asked to the interviewees. The second column shows us the classification of the categories, and the third column demonstrates a general tabulation of the replies obtained. From this perspective, we could notice that although buildings, monuments were the most prominent category, the Metropolitan Cathedral of Campinas, present in the religious building category, was the feature most remembered by the interviewees. Regarding the drawings designed by the interviewees, here we can see some highlighted results. As in the answers to the questions in the questionnaire, in the drawings, the places of memory in the central region of Campinas were not clearly distinguished either. Only some of them there was an allusion to the cultural assets that the city possesses, such as the cathedral, the cultural station, which is an important vestige of the heritage of the railways, and Carlos Gomes Square with its bandstand and a row of royal palm trees. Next, we are going to bring you some highlighted discussions raised from these results obtained through both narratives and drawings of the interviewees. The first point to start our discussion concerns the inconsistency between the memories of the people and the memories of the state. In our research, we could notice that the sites of memory highlighted by the people do not show a correspondence with the cultural assets and memory recognized by the state. Additionally, we also realize that this memory is more closely linked to the hegemonic powers and not to the memory found in the discourse of those who frequent or live in that place. In other words, the public authorities filter and select the cultural assets and lay down their own criteria for their preservation. This hinders a greater resonance between people's memories and the assets that are legally preserved by the inventory, and as it doesn't consider the vivid memories of the people in their everyday lives. Another point which deserves our attention is the lack of formal education in matters concerning heritage, which in turn undermines a real sense of belonging. What seems clear in our research is that many of the cultural places and assets and symbolic landmarks found in the center of the city were not mentioned by most of the interviewees, particularly the younger ones. This is a clear demonstration that there is a lack of resonance between the signs of memory in the memories described by the interviewees, which results from a lack of education in matters concerning heritage. In this point, it is important to remember that the memory of an object is a memory consisting of sensory and motor activities related to the interaction between the organism and the object over a given period of time. Moreover, the set of sensory motor activities varies in accordance with the circumstances and value of this object for us. For example, when our ancestors passed down a cultural treasure to us, it belongs to us because we value it and identify ourselves with it. In other words, we value the things that we want to keep and don't want to lose. But none of this can happen unless we know something and feel emotionally connected to it. Another point of our discussion is the loss of memories of a place and hence identity as a result of urban renewal. As to clarify this point, it might be a good idea to refer back to Spinoza. According to Spinoza, a person is affected either pleasantly or adversely by the image of something in the present, past, or future. Thus, most of the objects around us and the respective flows of ideas trigger emotions that are either powerful or weak, good or bad, conscious or unconscious. These emotions happen in the domain of the body or its cerebral maps and, as a result, affect our feelings. For instance, in the case of some buildings in the central area of many cities in Brazil, their abandonment can cause their physical deterioration. Hence, people assign a negative value to the place because the traditional and social values are forgotten or given lower priority. It was confirmed that, in general terms, the central area acquired negative associations and the popular imagination of most of the inhabitants who are used to the beauty, opulence, security, and cleanliness in the shopping centers and other central areas. In recent years, urban renewal has transformed the center of many Brazilian cities into commercial areas, particularly down market, which has led to an association with negative emotions and loss of identification. Another aspect of our discussion concerns the lack of synchronization between different dynamics of time as a significant factor in the loss of memories of a place. When it comes to consolidating memories of a place, the question of time is a fundamental benchmark once the view and the meaning of past phenomena are altered by time itself. In other words, different times give rise to different views of the past. Another perspective related to the concept of time regards its dynamics. For example, our historical background and constructed environment are formed of much slower dynamics. This slower dynamic is contrasted with the fast and dynamic rhythms of the contemporary society, surrounded by fast flows of information and technological changes. This collision between two temporal strata, one tangible and one intangible, seems to be the main cause of this lack of synchronization. As a result, this collision is determining a new kind of a reality for human beings, where the visual image is thus being superimposed on the concept. In other words, as visuality is prevailing over ideas, human awareness is becoming fragmented with a loss of integrity in our perception of the surrounding world. Finally, and summarizing our findings, our research indicates that the most likely motivational factors for the lack of resonance between the places of memory that tell the history of Campinas and the memories of places retained by the inhabitants of that city are lack of formal educational heritage and cultural traditions, loss of an ability to identify the created space, and hence a failure to recognize the value of this place as a result of an urban renewal, mismatch between the memories preserved by the state and the memories evoked by the local inhabitants, negative effects that the different dynamics regarding the concept of time can have on consolidating the memories of place. In other words, changes, transformations, and deterioration gradually affect people's memory and cut them off from their origins, past, and all they can remember. As future development, our research aims to broaden the discussion presented here to other places and cities, seeking to make the conclusions outlined here more universal and representative, and providing new conceptual instruments and methodologies. As we have been doing in another studies we have been conducted here, we are going to focus on the acquisition of neurophysiological signals of the volunteers during their drawing activities. This approach aims to introduce a biological layer of observation in order to reach another relevant variables for the research. We are confident that it certainly will raise new thoughts and questions enriching the possibilities of this methodology, which can enable measures to be taken for cultural preservation and the formation of memory and identity. That's all I would like to share with you for this moment. Thanks so much.
So again, in the interest of time, let's take one question before we move into the foyer. Anything? All right, well, yes, there we go. And I thought you might say something.
Yes, and I thought that you might think that I might want to ask something, because we were sitting earlier at the table together, and I think you might agree that what we were discussing was pretty much going into that direction. So first of all, thank you very much for your presentation, and I was more than intrigued, because I think the difference between what the state has as a memory and what people have as a memory is the difference between history and story, and it's the difference between a narrative and a record, isn't it? I like to think of a city as a storyscape. That is not my word, but it's borrowed from a man called Ned Kaufman, who writes wonderful articles on that topic on New York City. And what we were discussing at the table earlier was to what extent architects can work with that and use what there might be as underlying history. You said there are two strata, but it's, excuse me to correct, it's not two, it is a lot. It's lots, isn't it? Even though we may say two. So it was just a comment, and I really want to learn more about this. But one question, how many cultural levels did you consider then? Did you go back to the, well, would you say native Brazilian people? How far did the roots go?
How far?
Yes. When we were talking about personal memories, did they reflect the histories that people might have inherited via their families or via their communities? Because not everything will be their personal experience, but it might be the experience that their mom and dad